The dust settled around the overturned wagon as Sarah Mitchell struggled to free herself from beneath the heavy wooden wheel. Her father lay motionless nearby, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The bandits had struck without warning, appearing like ghosts from behind the red rocks of Arizona territory. Their leader, a scarred man with cold blue eyes, had demanded everything of value before shooting her father and leaving them for dead in the desert. Sarah's white dress was torn and stained with dirt and blood. Her hands shook as she tried to push the wagon wheel off her trapped leg. The pain was unbearable, but she knew she had to get free. The sun was already high in the sky and the desert heat was becoming deadly, without water or shelter. She and her father would not survive another day. She heard the sound of approaching horses and felt her heart sink. The bandits were returning to finish what they had started. Sarah closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, knowing this might be her final moment, but when she opened her eyes, she saw something unexpected. The riders approaching were not the same men who had attacked them. 3 Apache warriors sat tall on their horses, their long black hair flowing in the desert wind. They wore traditional clothing mixed with some modern pieces they had traded. For in town, their faces were painted with symbols Sarah did not understand, but their eyes held no malice. The leader of the group dismounted and walked toward her with careful measured steps. Joaquin Fierro was known among his people as a skilled warrior and tracker. At 28 years old, he had led many successful raids against those who threatened his tribe's land and way of life. His dark eyes had seen much violence and death, but when he looked down at the trapped white woman, something stirred in his heart that he had never felt before. Sarah looked up at him with fear and desperation. In her green eyes, her auburn hair had come loose from its pins and fell around her shoulders like copper in the sunlight. Despite her torn dress and dirty face, Joaquin could see she was beautiful. More than that, he could see strength in her eyes, a determination to survive that impressed him. "Please," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from the desert heat. "Help us. My father is hurt badly." Joaquin knelt beside the wagon and examined the situation. The wheel had Sarah's leg pinned, but he could see no blood. Her father's breathing was shallow, but steady. These people needed help, and despite what his warrior training told him about white settlers, Joaquin felt compelled to act, with a gesture to his companions. Joaquin lifted the heavy wagon wheel as if it weighed nothing. Sarah gasped as the pressure was released from her leg. She tried to stand, but immediately fell back down, her leg too injured to support her weight. Without hesitation, Joaquin scooped her up in his strong arms. "Your father lives," he said in careful English. "Take you both to safe place." Sarah stared into his dark eyes, surprised by the gentleness she saw there. She had heard terrible stories about Apache warriors, tales of violence and cruelty. But this man's touch was careful, almost reverent, as he carried her to his horse. His companions were already loading her unconscious father onto another horse with surprising care, as Joaquin helped Sarah onto his horse. She caught his scent of sage and leather. His arms around her felt strong and protective as he guided the horse away from the scene of the attack. She should have been afraid, she knew. Everything she had been taught told her these men were dangerous, but something about Joaquin's presence made her feel safer than she had in months. They rode for hours through the desert landscape, past towering mesas and hidden canyons. Sarah had never seen this part of the territory before. The beauty of the land was overwhelming, painted in shades of red and gold that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. Joaquin rode with confidence, knowing every rock and every path through this wilderness that was his home. As the sun began to set, they arrived at a hidden valley where smoke rose from cooking fires. Sarah saw dozens of wickiups, the traditional dwellings of the Apache people. Women and children came out to watch their arrival, their faces curious but not hostile. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes approached them as Joaquin dismounted. "This woman and her father need healing, grandmother," Joaquin said in his native language. The old woman, who was the tribe's medicine woman, examined Sarah's injuries with gentle hands. She spoke softly to Joaquin, who who nodded and then turned. To Sarah, "You stay here tonight. Your father too sick to travel. Morning Star will care for you both." Sarah looked around the Apache camp with wonder and growing concern. These people had saved their lives, but she was still a white woman in an Apache village. She had heard stories of captives who were never seen again. Yet when she looked at Joaquin, she saw only concern and what might have been admiration in his eyes. Morning Star. The medicine woman led Sarah to a comfortable wickiup, where her father was already resting on soft furs. His color was better, and his breathing had improved. The old woman had cleaned and bandaged his head wound with herbs that smelled of mint and other plants Sarah could not identify. "Your father will recover," Joaquin said from the entrance of the dwelling, "but it will take time." "Why are you helping?" "Us?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Joaquin was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face in the firelight. When he finally spoke, his words sent a shiver through her heart. "Sometimes the spirits bring people together for reasons we do not understand at first. I saw you fighting to live, fighting to save your father. You have the heart of a warrior, even though you're white. Such courage deserves respect." As night fell over the Apache village, Sarah lay awake, listening to the sounds of this strange new world. Somewhere in the darkness, she could hear Joaquin's voice as he spoke with other warriors around their fire. His words were in Apache, but something in his tone made her think he was talking about her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions, but tonight she was alive and safe because of this Apache warrior who had appeared when all hope seemed lost. Sarah woke to the sound of children laughing and women talking softly as they prepared the morning meal. Sunlight filtered through the entrance of the wickiup, casting dancing shadows on the woven walls. Her father was sitting up, looking much better than he had the night before. Morning Star sat beside him, offering him a bowl of something that smelled like herbs and broth. "Sarah, my dear girl," her father said, his voice weak but clear. "These people saved our lives. This woman, she has healing powers like nothing I've ever seen." Morning Star smiled at Sarah and gestured for her to sit. The medicine woman examined Sarah's injured leg, pressing gently along the bone and muscle. Sarah winced, but was relieved to find she could move her foot without the sharp pain of the day before. Morning Star nodded approvingly and said something in Apache. "She says your leg is not broken, only bruised deeply," came Joaquin's voice. From behind them, "You were fortunate." Sarah turned to see him standing in the entrance, outlined by the morning sun. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow, though his eyes still held the wisdom and strength she had noticed the day before. He wore a simple cloth shirt and leather pants, with a turquoise necklace that caught the light. His long black hair was tied back with a leather cord decorated with feathers and small bones. "My father says you saved our lives," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "How can we ever repay such kindness?" Joaquin entered the wickiup and knelt beside them. "Your safety is payment enough. But now we must talk about what comes next. The men who attacked you, they are known to us. They have been raiding along the trade routes for months." Sarah's father, Thomas Mitchell, struggled to sit up straighter. "They took everything we had. Our wagon, our supplies, even my wife's jewelry that Sarah was wearing. We were heading to Phoenix to start a new life after losing our farm in Kansas. These men are dangerous," Joaquin continued. "They work with corrupt officials in some towns, selling stolen goods and splitting the profits. If you go to the authorities in Phoenix, you may find no help. Some of the lawmen there are part of their group." Sarah felt her heart sink. They had lost everything and now learned they might not even be able to find justice or help in Phoenix. "Then what can we do?" "We have nothing left." Joaquin looked at her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "You can stay here while your father heals. My people have decided to offer you sanctuary until it is safe for you to continue your journey." "But we're white settlers," Sarah said, confused. An older man entered the wickiup, his presence commanding immediate respect. He wore traditional Apache clothing but also carried a rifle and wore a silver watch chain across his vest. Joaquin stood and spoke to him in their language before turning back to Sarah and her father. "This is Chief Nate, my uncle. He wishes to speak with you." The chief looked at Thomas Mitchell with eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his English was better than Joaquin's, though heavily accented. "My nephew tells me you are good people who were wronged by bad men. In the old days, we might have seen all white people as enemies, but times change. We have learned that there are good and bad among all peoples. You may stay until you are strong enough to travel safely." Thomas Mitchell tried to stand to show respect, but the chief gestured for him to remain seated. "Sir, we are grateful beyond words, but we cannot impose on your generosity without offering something in return." "You are a blacksmith, yes?" the chief asked. "My nephew found tools in your wagon before the bandits scattered everything." "Yes, sir." "Been working iron for 20 years. Then perhaps you can help us while you heal. Our weapons need care, and we have metal that needs shaping. If you are willing to work, you will earn your place among us temporarily." Sarah watched this exchange with growing amazement. These Apache people were nothing like the savage warriors she had heard about in stories. They were organized, thoughtful, and more civilized than many white settlements she had known. Over the following days, Sarah found herself drawn into the daily life of the Apache village. The women initially kept their distance, but Morning Star took Sarah under her protection, teaching her about their ways. Sarah learned to grind corn, to weave baskets, and to identify the desert plants used for medicine and food. Joaquin appeared. Often, sometimes to check on her father's work at the makeshift forge they had built for him. But more often, simply to talk with Sarah. He taught her Apache words and told her stories of his people's history and traditions. She found herself looking forward to these visits more than she cared to admit. "Your people have lived here for hundreds of years," Sarah said one evening, as they sat by the cooking fire. "It must be hard to see so many changes coming to the territory." Joaquin stared into the flames, his expression thoughtful. "Change comes whether we welcome it or not. The question is how we adapt while keeping what matters most to us." "And what matters most to you?" Sarah asked quietly. He looked at her then, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart race. Family, honor, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And now, paused, as if unsure whether to continue. "Now what?" "Now I find myself thinking about things I never considered before, about what it might mean to build something new while honoring the old ways." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was not naive about what was happening between them. Despite the differences in their backgrounds, despite the danger and uncertainty of their situation, she was falling in love with this Apache warrior who had saved her life. "Joaquin," she said softly, "what will happen when my father is well enough to travel?" He was quiet for a long moment, watching the fire dance between them. "That depends on many things. On where you wish to go. On whether the bandits are still a threat. On whether you find something here worth staying for." Their eyes met across the fire, and Sarah knew he was not just talking about the safety of the Apache village. He was talking about the connection growing between them. The attraction that defied everything both of their peoples would expect, or approve of. "My father expects us to continue to Phoenix," she said. "We plan to start a store there, maybe find me a suitable husband among the settlers." "And what do you expect?" Joaquin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked around the Apache camp, at the people who had welcomed them with such unexpected kindness, at the man whose very presence made her feel more alive than she ever had before. "I'm beginning to think my expectations might be changing," she said. 3 weeks had passed since the attack, and Sarah's father had grown stronger with each passing day. His skill as a blacksmith had made him valuable to the Apache tribe, and he seemed to enjoy the work and the respect it brought him. Sarah watched him laughing with some of the warriors as he showed them how to repair their rifle barrels, and she realized he was happier than she had seen him. Since her mother's death 2 years earlier, Sarah herself had changed during their time with the Apache. Her skin had bronzed from working outdoors, and her hands had grown strong from grinding corn and weaving. She moved with more confidence now, no longer the sheltered farm girl who had been attacked in the desert. The Apache women had begun to accept her as one of their own, teaching her their songs and including her in their daily activities. Most importantly, her relationship with Joaquin had deepened into something that both thrilled and terrified her. He sought her out every day, sometimes to teach her new skills like tracking or identifying edible plants, but more often simply to be near her. They would sit together in the evenings, talking about their different worlds and finding surprising similarities in their values and dreams. In my people's tradition, Joaquin told her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the desert mountains red and gold, a man must prove himself worthy before he can court a woman. He must show he can provide for her and protect her. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. And how does he do that? Usually by bringing gifts to her family: horses, food, weapons, things that show his wealth and hunting ability. But I'm not Apache, Sarah said quietly. Your traditions don't apply to me. Joaquin turned to look at her, his dark eyes intense. In the fading light, maybe not. But a man should still prove his worth to the woman he cares about. Before Sarah could respond to this declaration, they heard shouting from the edge of the village. Warriors were grabbing their weapons and mounting their horses. Joaquin jumped to his feet, instantly alert. What's happening? Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. Riders approaching. Many of them. Chief Nate appeared, barking orders. In Apache, Joaquin spoke quickly with him, then turned back to Sarah. Take your father and go to Morningstar's wiki up. Stay there until we know what this is about. Sarah hurried to find her father, who was already being escorted to safety by 2 Apache women. As they huddled in the medicine woman's dwelling, they could hear the sound of many horses entering the village. Voices were raised, some in Apache, others in English. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes, Joaquin appeared at the entrance to the wickiup. His face was grim. The riders are white men from Phoenix. They say they are looking for 2 people who were reported missing after an attack by bandits. Sarah's father stood up slowly. That would be us. But how did they know to look for us here? Someone told them we might have found you. They want you to come with them immediately. Sarah felt a chill of fear. Who are these men? Are they lawmen? They claim to be. But some of my people recognize them from the descriptions of the bandits who attacked you. I think these are the same men, or some of their friends. Thomas Mitchell's face darkened with anger. They come here pretending to rescue us when they're the ones who tried to kill us. It's worse than that, Joaquin said grimly, demanding that we turn you over, and they're threatening our village if we don't comply. They have 20 armed men. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. The kindness and safety she had found among the Apache people was about to be destroyed because of her presence. Then we have to go with them. We can't let your people be harmed because of us. No, Joaquin said firmly. These men mean to finish what they started. It will kill you both as soon as you're away from the village. Then what choice do we have? Sarah asked desperately. Joaquin looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, fierce and determined. There is one way. It is dangerous, but it might work. What way? Apache law is recognized by the territorial government. If you were to become part of our tribe through marriage, these men would have no legal right to take you. You would be under our protection as tribal members. Sarah stared at him, her heart pounding. Marriage, you mean? I mean you would become my wife. Both you and your father would be adopted into our tribe. It's the only way I can legally protect you. Thomas Mitchell stepped forward, his face serious. Joaquin, my boy, that's a generous offer, but marriage should be about love, not just protection. Joaquin looked directly at Sarah, his eyes full of emotion. Who says it wouldn't be about love? Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. This brave, honorable man was offering to marry her to save her life, but she could see in his face that it was much more than that for him. The feelings that had been growing between them over the past weeks were real and deep. I'll rescue you now, but soon you'll be my wife, Joaquin said, his voice full of quiet determination. If you'll have me. Not just because of the danger, but because I love you, Sarah Mitchell. I've loved you since the moment I lifted that wagon wheel off your leg. Sarah looked at this man who had already saved her life once, and was now offering to save it again by binding his fate to hers forever. She thought about the life she had planned in Phoenix, the conventional marriage her father had envisioned for her, the safe but colorless future that awaited her in white society. Then she thought about the past 3 weeks among the Apache, the sense of purpose and belonging she had found, the way her heart raced every time Joaquin looked at her. The deep respect and affection she had developed for his people and their ways. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I'll marry you." Her father looked shocked, but not displeased. "Sarah, are you certain? This would mean giving up everything you've known." "I'm not giving up anything, Papa. I'm gaining everything I never knew I wanted." Joaquin stepped forward and took her hands in his. "Then we must act quickly. Chief Nate can perform the ceremony immediately, and Morningstar can serve as witness. Once it's done, those men outside will have to respect Apache law." As they prepared for the hasty ceremony that would change Sarah's life forever, she could hear the white men outside growing more impatient and threatening. Time was running out, but for the first time since the bandit attack, Sarah felt truly hopeful about her future. She was about to marry the man she loved, join a people who had shown her nothing but kindness, and escape the men who wanted to harm her and her father. The ceremony would be unlike anything she had ever imagined for her wedding day, but as she looked into Joaquin's eyes, she knew it would be perfect. Chief Nate moved swiftly to prepare for the emergency ceremony. In Apache tradition, marriages were usually celebrated with days of preparation and ceremony, but the threatening presence of the armed men outside made a quick union necessary. Morningstar gathered the required items: a basket of corn, a piece of turquoise, and a blanket woven with symbols of protection and fertility. "In our way," the chief explained quickly to Sarah and her father, "marriage is a joining not just of two people, but of their families and spirits. Are you prepared to accept our ways as your own?" Sarah nodded, her hands trembling slightly as Morningstar began to braid feathers and small turquoise stones into her hair. The old woman worked quickly but carefully, whispering Apache blessings. As she prepared the bride, outside they could hear one of the white men shouting, "We know you're in there, Mitchell. Come out now, or we'll come in and get you." Thomas Mitchell placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Chief, these men sound like they're losing patience. How much time do we have?" Nuff Nate replied grimly. "Joaquin, bring the other warriors. If these men try to interrupt the ceremony, we will be ready." Joaquin squeezed Sarah's hand gently before stepping outside to organize the village's defenses. Sarah could hear him speaking rapidly in Apache to the other warriors, his voice calm but commanding. She realized that she was about to marry not just a kind and brave man, but a leader among his people. Morningstar finished her preparations and stepped back to examine Sarah. The medicine woman smiled and said something in Apache that made Chief Nate nod approvingly. "She says you look like a true Apache woman now," the chief translated. "The spirits will smile on this union." Sarah looked down at herself, surprised by the transformation. Her torn white dress had been replaced with a soft doeskin dress decorated with intricate beadwork. Her auburn hair, now braided with feathers and stones, fell down her back in the Apache style. She felt different, stronger, as if the clothes had somehow changed her from the inside out. Joaquin returned, flanked by several warriors. He had also changed clothes, and now wore traditional Apache wedding garments: a white cloth shirt decorated with turquoise and silver, leather leggings with intricate beadwork, and a headband with eagle feathers. Looked magnificent every inch the warrior and leader he was. "The men outside are growing aggressive," he reported to his uncle. "But they haven't tried to enter the village yet. I think they're unsure of their legal ground if they attack a sovereign Apache settlement." "Then we proceed quickly," Chief Nate declared. "Stand together." Sarah and Joaquin moved to the center of the wickiup, facing each other. The chief began to speak in Apache, his voice carrying the weight of ancient tradition. Morningstar translated. Quietly for Sarah and her father, he asked the spirits to witness this union and to bless it with strength, wisdom, and many children. He calls on the four directions to protect you and on the ancestors to guide your path together. Chief Nate lifted the basket of corn and sprinkled some over both Sarah and Joaquin, then placed the piece of turquoise in Sarah's hands and covered them with Joaquin's hands. "This stone represents the earth that sustains us and the sky that watches over us," Morningstar whispered. "As long as you hold it together, your bond will be as strong as the mountains." The chief then took the woven blanket and wrapped it around both Sarah and Joaquin, binding them together physically as spiritually. In the eyes of the Apache people, and according to our ancient laws, you are now husband and wife, Chief Nate declared. What the spirits have joined together, no man can separate. Joaquin looked into Sarah's eyes with such love and intensity that she felt her knees weaken. I promise to protect you, provide for you, and love you for all the days of my life, he said softly. And I promise to stand beside you, support you, and love you through whatever comes, Sarah replied, meaning every word. They sealed their vows with a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together.
Around them.
The Apache witnesses made sounds of approval and blessing. Their moment of joy was interrupted by angry shouting from outside. Time's up! We're coming in! Joaquin immediately moved to shield Sarah with his body, while the other warriors positioned themselves defensively. Remember, he said quietly, you are now my wife under Apache law. They cannot take you without cause. The entrance to the wickiup was suddenly filled with armed white men. Their leader was a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek and cold blue eyes that Sarah recognized with a chill of fear. Well, well, the scarred man said with a cruel smile. Right. If it isn't the blacksmith and his pretty daughter. You've caused us a lot of trouble running off like that. We didn't run off, Thomas Mitchell said firmly, stepping forward despite his fear. You left us for dead after robbing us. It's a serious accusation, old man. Can you prove it? Joaquin stepped forward, his hand resting casually on the knife at his belt. This woman is now my wife under Apache law. She and her father are under tribal protection. You have no authority here. The scarred man laughed harshly. Apache law? That's rich. As far as the territorial government is concerned, you people barely exist. And marriage to a savage doesn't make her anything but a savage herself. Sarah felt anger flare in her chest at the insult to her new husband and his people. I am Sarah Fierro now, she said proudly, using Joaquin's surname, and I choose to be here. Choice. Another of the white men sneered. Looks like you've been taken captive to me. Don't worry, miss. We'll get you back to civilization. Is not captive, Chief? Nate said, his voice carrying absolute authority. She chose to marry my nephew freely. Ceremony was witnessed according to our law. Scarred man's eyes narrowed dangerously. Your law doesn't mean anything. We're taking them both, and if you try to stop us, we'll burn this whole village to the ground. The tension in the wickiup became almost unbearable. Sarah could see that Joaquin and his warriors were ready to fight. But she also knew that 20 armed men could do terrible damage to the village. Innocent people, including women and children, would suffer. There must be another way, she whispered to Joaquin. He looked at her with fierce protectiveness. Not while I draw breath. I gave you my word that I would protect you, and I intend to keep it. The scarred man was reaching for his gun when a new voice cut through the tension like a knife. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Everyone turned to see a figure silhouetted in the entrance to the wickiup. Sarah's heart leaped with hope as she recognized the star pinned to the newcomer's vest and realized that help had arrived at last. The man who stepped into the wickiup was tall and lean, with graying hair and steady blue eyes. His badge identified him as a United States Marshal, and the way he carried himself spoke of years of experience dealing with dangerous men. Behind him, Sarah could see several more lawmen positioned around the entrance. Marshal James Crawford, he announced, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. Suggest everyone put their weapons down right now. Scarred man's hand froze, halfway to his gun. Marshal, these Apache have taken hostages. We're just trying to rescue them, is that so? Marshal Crawford stepped fully into the wickiup, his keen eyes taking in the scene. Funny thing about that, been tracking you and your gang for 3 months, Blake Connors. Bank robbery in Tucson, stagecoach holdups, and now kidnapping and attempted murder. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. The law had finally caught up with the men who had destroyed her old life. Their true identity was being revealed. Blake Connors, the scarred leader, tried to maintain his facade. Marshal, you've got it all wrong. These people were attacked by bandits, and we came to help them. Really? The marshal pulled out a wanted poster with Blake's face on it. Then why does this say you're wanted for robbery and murder? And why did the Apache messenger who found me 3 days ago tell me that the Mitchell family was being protected here after being attacked by your gang. Joaquin stepped forward respectfully. Marshal, I am Joaquin Fierro. I sent that messenger. After we rescued these people from the desert where they had been left to die, and I'm grateful you did, son. Are Mr. Mitchell and his daughter here of their own free will? Absolutely, Thomas Mitchell said firmly. These people saved our lives and have shown us nothing but kindness. My daughter has just married Joaquin Fierro according to Apache law. Marshal Crawford raised an eyebrow and looked at Sarah. Ma'am, is that true? Are you here willingly? Sarah lifted her chin proudly. Yes, Marshal. I am Sarah Fierro now, and I chose to marry this man because I love him and respect his people. Blake Connors snarled in frustration. She's been brainwashed. These savages have filled her head with lies. The only lies here are coming from you, Connors, the marshal said. Coldly, I have witnesses who saw you and your men attack the Mitchell wagon. I have the stolen goods you've been selling in Phoenix, and I have testimony from 3 other families you've robbed. The scarred man's composure finally cracked. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. Your partner, Jake Morrison, was arrested 2 days ago, trying to sell Mrs. Mitchell's jewelry in Phoenix. He told us everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. Sarah gasped. My mother's necklace, the one Jake stole? We recovered it, ma'am, along with several other items that belonged to you and your father. Blake Connors looked around desperately. Realizing his situation was hopeless, his men were outnumbered by the marshal's party and the Apache warriors. Several of them were already dropping their weapons and raising their hands in surrender. You're all under arrest, Marshal Crawford announced. Blake Connors, Jake Morrison told us, you're the leader of this gang. You're wanted for robbery, assault, attempted murder, and now threatening a sovereign Apache nation. As the marshal's men began restraining the outlaws, Sarah felt Joaquin's arm around her waist, strong and protective. She leaned into him finally, able to fully relax knowing the threat to their safety was over. Marshal, Chief Nate said formally, we thank you for bringing justice to our land. These people threatened our village and dishonored our laws. Chief Nate, I've heard good things about your leadership. The territorial government recognizes Apache sovereignty within your lands. These men had no right to threaten you or your people. The chief nodded approvingly. And what of the marriage between my nephew and this woman? Is it recognized by your courts? Marshal Crawford considered this carefully. Apache marriages have been recognized by territorial courts in the past, especially when witnessed properly. From what I can see, this appears to be a legitimate union. Sarah felt a surge of joy and relief. Not only were they safe from the outlaws, but her marriage to Joaquin would be recognized by both Apache and American law. As Blake Connors was led away in chains, he turned back with a look of pure hatred. This ain't over, girl. You think you can live with these savages? You'll see what your choice really costs you. Joaquin stepped forward, his dark eyes blazing with protective fury. If you ever threaten my wife again, you will answer to me. I promise you will not like the outcome. The marshal put a restraining hand on Joaquin's arm. Easy, son. He's going to prison for a long time. He won't be threatening anyone. After the outlaws were removed and the immediate danger passed, Marshal Crawford sat with Sarah, her father, and the Apache leaders to discuss the future. Mrs. Fierro, he said, still adjusting to her new name, you have some decisions to make. The territory has been developing rapidly, and there are opportunities for people like you and your father in the growing towns. What kind of opportunities? Thomas Mitchell asked. Your reputation as a skilled blacksmith has spread, even here. Several towns need craftsmen, and there's good money to be made. Phoenix, Tucson, even some of the mining camps. Sarah looked at Joaquin, wondering what he was thinking. They had married to escape immediate danger, but now they had to decide what their life together would really look like. Marshal Joaquin said thoughtfully, what would it mean for us if we wanted to live sometimes with the Apache people and sometimes in the white towns? Well, that's becoming more common, actually, the marshal replied. There are several mixed families doing exactly that. You could establish a business in one of the towns and maintain your ties to the Apache community. The territorial government is trying to encourage peaceful cooperation between all the peoples here. Yes. Sarah felt her heart lift at this possibility. She had found love and belonging with the Apache, But she also knew her father would be happiest, where he could use his skills to their fullest potential. There's something else, the marshal continued. The territorial governor has been looking for people who can serve as liaisons between the Yedes, Apache nations, and the white settlements. Someone like you, Joaquin, who speaks both languages and understands both cultures, could be valuable in that role. Joaquin looked intrigued. What would such work involve? Helping to negotiate trade agreements, resolving disputes peacefully, making sure both sides understand each other's laws and customs. It would require travel between the Apache lands and the territorial capital. But it would also pay well and serve an important purpose. Sarah reached for Joaquin's hand. What? Do you think? Could we build a life that honors both of our worlds? I think, Joaquin said slowly, that perhaps the spirits brought us together, not just to save each other, but to help bridge the gap between our peoples. Chief Nate had been listening quietly to this conversation. Now he spoke up. My nephew, if this is the path you choose, you will have the blessing and support of our people. You have always been a bridge builder, even as a warrior. Thomas Mitchell cleared his throat. Marshal, if I might ask, what happened to our original belongings? The wagon and tools? Most of it was recovered. Your wagon needs some repair, but your tools are intact. The territorial government will compensate you for your losses and the trauma you've suffered. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the sudden reversal. Of their fortunes, just hours ago they had been in mortal danger with no possessions and no prospects. Now they had options, opportunities, and a future full of possibilities. There's one more thing, Marshal Crawford said with a slight smile. The reward for Blake Connors and his gang was substantial. As the victims who helped us catch them, you're entitled to a portion of that reward. Sarah looked at Joaquin in amazement. We'll have money to start a real life together? Enough to buy land, build a house, start a business, whatever you choose. The marshal confirmed. As the marshal prepared to leave with his prisoners, he shook hands with Joaquin and tipped his hat to Sarah. Mrs. Firo, I hope you'll be very happy. You've chosen a good man and a good people. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the porch of the house she and Joaquin had built on a piece of land halfway between the Apache village and the growing town of Mesa. The adobe structure combined Apache and Mexican architectural styles with thick walls to keep out the desert heat and a large central courtyard where her father had set up his expanded blacksmith shop. The morning sun painted the desert landscape in shades of gold and red, and Sarah never tired of watching the sunrise over the mountains. Her life had settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and exciting. 3 days a week, she and Joaquin traveled to various towns where he worked as a territorial liaison, helping to negotiate disputes and trade agreements between Apache communities and white settlers. The other days they spent at their ranch or visiting the Apache village where they had first met. Morning, daughter, Thomas Mitchell called out as he fired up his forge. His business had grown beyond anything he had imagined in Kansas. Mining. Companies, ranchers, and townspeople all sought out his skilled craftsmanship. More importantly, he had found a sense of purpose and community that had eased the grief he had carried since his wife's death. Morning, Papa, Sarah called back, using a mixture of Apache and English that had become natural to their household. She was hanging laundry on the line, her movements efficient and practiced. The soft doeskin dresses she now wore were more practical for desert life than the heavy cotton dresses of her past. Joaquin emerged from the stable, where he had been caring for their horses. Their small ranch now boasted a dozen head of cattle and several horses that Joaquin used in his work as a liaison. He had proven himself invaluable to the territorial government, and his reputation as a fair and honest negotiator had spread. Throughout Arizona Territory, the messenger from Phoenix arrived early this morning. He told Sarah, holding up an official-looking letter, "The territorial governor wants to meet with us next week about the new mining rights dispute near Apache lands." Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and took the letter. She had learned to read the legal language of territorial documents, and her insights often helped Joaquin prepare for his negotiations. This looks complicated. They want to open copper mines right at the border of Chief Nate's territory. Will require careful handling, Joaquin agreed. The mining company is offering good money, but the Apache are concerned about the impact on their water sources and hunting grounds. What do you think we should propose? Joaquin smiled at her. Use of we. Sarah had become his true partner in his work, not just his wife. Her unique perspective as someone who understood both worlds, and her natural intelligence and diplomacy had made her an asset in his negotiations. I think we need to visit the site first, then talk to both the miners and the tribal council. There might be a compromise that protects the water while allowing some mining in less sensitive areas. This was the kind of work that gave their marriage deeper meaning beyond their personal love. They were genuinely helping to shape a more peaceful and cooperative future for the territory. One negotiation at a time. A cloud of dust on the horizon caught Sarah's attention. Riders coming, she observed, shading her eyes with her hand. Joaquin looked and grinned. It's Morning Star and some of the women from the village. They said they might visit today. Indeed, Morning Star rode up with 3 other Apache women, all of them beaming with excitement. The old medicine woman had become like a grandmother to Sarah, teaching her traditional healing arts and serving as a bridge to full acceptance within the Apache community. Granddaughter, Morning Star said in Apache as she dismounted, we bring news. Good news, I hope, Sarah replied in the same language, which still drew approving nods from the Apache women. Very good news. The tribal council has decided to offer your husband a permanent position as peace chief. It would make him one of our official leaders, with a voice in all major decisions affecting our people. Sarah looked at Joaquin in amazement. A peace chief was a position of great honor among the Apache, usually reserved for those born into the tribe. For them to offer it to Joaquin showed how much respect he had earned. This is a great honor, Joaquin said solemnly. But I would need to think carefully about whether I can serve both the Apache people and the territorial government without conflicts. That is why the council chose you, another of the women said. Because you always think of what is best for everyone, not just yourself. As the women settled in for a visit, sharing news and gossip from the village, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed. She was no longer the sheltered farm girl who had been attacked in the desert. She had become a woman of 2 worlds. Equally at home in Apache traditions and territorial society, her father joined them for the midday meal. And Sarah watched with pleasure as he and Morning Star discussed the medicinal properties of various plants. Thomas had developed a deep respect for Apache knowledge and had even learned to speak basic Apache phrases. You know, he said thoughtfully, I never imagined when we left Kansas that we'd end up building something so meaningful here. Back there, I was just another struggling farmer. Here I feel like I'm part of something important. The spirits guide us to where we need to be, Morning Star said with a wise smile. Sometimes the path is not what we expect, but it leads to what our hearts truly need. After the Apache women left, Sarah and Joaquin sat together on their porch. As the sun began to set, it had become their daily ritual, this quiet time to share their thoughts and plans. Are you going to accept the position of peace chief? Sarah asked. What do you think I should do? Sarah considered carefully. I think you're already serving as a peace chief, whether it's official or not. Having the title might actually make your work easier, give you more authority in negotiations. And you wouldn't mind being married to a peace chief? It would mean more responsibility, more demands on our time. Sarah laughed. Joaquin Fierro. I married an Apache warrior who rescued me from certain death. I think I can handle being married to a peace chief. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. Sometimes I still can't believe how everything worked out. When I first saw you trapped under that wagon wheel, I never imagined we'd build a life like this. Do you ever regret it? Choosing to bridge 2 worlds instead of just living in one? Joaquin looked out at the desert landscape they both loved, then back at his wife. Never. This life we've built together, this work we do, it feels like what I was meant for. And loving you, being loved by you, that's the best part of it all. Sarah felt tears of happiness in her eyes. I love you too. And I'm grateful every day for that wagon wheel that brought us together. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the vast Arizona sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, new opportunities to make a difference in their corner of the world. But tonight, they were simply a man and woman who had found love in the most unexpected circumstances and built something beautiful from it. In the distance, a coyote howled, and from the Apache village came the faint sound of evening songs. Sarah smiled, knowing she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the man she was meant to love, living exactly the life she had never known she wanted until she found it. Their love story had begun with a rescue, but it had become something much greater, a bridge between worlds, a partnership in building a better future, and a testament to the power of love to transform not just to lives but an entire community.